Get out of the formation. Doctors don't fight. Hayes' shout slammed down like a steel hammer, cutting Sarah Mitchell's breath in two. Before everyone's eyes, she was dragged from the ranks, humiliated to the point her entire body trembled. Mocking laughter echoed off the concrete walls. A trembling medic, a coward pushed to the sidelines. Sarah bowed her head, but in her brown eyes, beneath the layer of fear, a storm waited to break. They thought they'd eliminated her. They believed a doctor who doesn't fight was just a burden. But no one understood that fear had once saved an entire unit. And when Iraq erupted in fire and bullets, when the enemy targeted them with absolute ruthlessness, that phrase would become the most misguided prophecy. Because Sarah was about to do what no one expected. The sharp crack of gunfire reverberated against the concrete walls of the Fort Carson firing range. The morning air was dry and harsh, the smell of gunpowder mingling with the lingering chill of dawn. In the long line of soldiers taking turns firing their M4S, one figure stood out, alone. Sarah Mitchell, in her crisp uniform, gripped her medic bag tightly, as if it were her last shield against the world. Each burst of gunfire made her shoulders flinch, her breath fractured, her heartbeat erratic, as if every shot was aimed at her chest. The fear wasn't just instinct, it was memory. Fragments of another battlefield resurfacing, ones she had tried to bury for years. Around her, laughter broke out. Mocking eyes pierced her like needles. Sergeant Derek Thompson, built like a steel wall, turned his back on the target to taunt her. A medic at the range? You're in the wrong place. This isn't the ER. The infantry roared with laughter, whistles and claps crashing like waves. Sarah clenched her teeth, her hand unconsciously brushing the faded dog tag under her shirt, a keepsake no one noticed. She stepped back, her shoulders pressed against the cold concrete, counting her breaths like a survival ritual. She knew she was trembling, knew that image would cling to them like an indelible stain. But no one saw the scars beneath her long sleeves, marks that didn't belong to an ordinary medic. The crunch of boots on gravel. Captain Hayes appeared, his rugged silhouette dominating the training ground. He didn't shout, but his low, gravelly voice cut through the laughter. Mitchell. One word, and Sarah froze, her hand gripping the bag's strap until her knuckles turned white. He studied her for a few silent seconds. Just a few seconds, but it felt like an entire sentence. You don't belong here. His voice was cold, not judgmental, not merciful, as if stating a fact already written in her file. Doctors don't fight. Those words struck like a hammer, reverberating down her spine. It wasn't the first time she'd heard them, but this time, it was public, official, in the middle of the range, before the eyes of everyone deploying in 2 weeks. The unit fell silent for half a second. Then the laughter exploded again. Louder. Crueler. Sarah didn't respond. Her head bowed, her disheveled hair hiding part of her face. But beneath that trembling veil, her brown eyes glinted with something else. A silent storm, caged behind walls of memory. Hayes signaled. A corporal stepped forward, stripping the M4 from her hands. The cold metal left her palms, taking with it the last shred of respect she had. Sarah stood there, silent, her medic bag slung unevenly over her shoulder. She didn't resist, didn't explain. Words were useless. Dismissed, Hayes said curtly. The infantry dispersed, still chuckling, still repeating the taunt. Doctors don't fight. A new catchphrase to mock each other and to brand her permanently. Sarah turned away, each step heavy as if wading through mud. Every crunch of gravel under her boots recalled another night. Syria. Bomb smoke. Cries. A wrong decision that killed her team. She had sworn to be only a doctor. But now, even that identity was being stripped away. In the empty barracks later, Sarah sat alone, unpacking her medic bag, checking and rearranging each item. Bandages, morphine, tourniquets. Everything had to be perfect. In place, in order. It was the only ritual keeping her hands from shaking. She repeated it 3 times, 4 times, until her fingers were raw. Outside, laughter echoed from the mess hall. The phrase had spread through the unit. Doctors don't fight. Sarah knew by tomorrow it would be her official nickname, a label she could never peel off. And in 2 weeks, when the convoy left Fort Carson for Iraq, she wouldn't be part of it. At least, that's what they thought. Sarah folded her medic bag, her eyes drifting to an old photo tucked under her pillow. 4 figures in combat gear, their faces blurred. Fallen comrades, a lost past, a piece of her buried with them. She whispered, so softly only she could hear, doctors don't fight until they have no other choice. Night at Fort Carson was silent as a deep pit. Sarah sat on her iron bunk in the barracks, the dim glow of a bedside lamp casting her shadow as a distorted shape on the wall. Outside, the laughter and shouts of soldiers echoed from the common area. But in her cramped room, Sarah's world shrank to the medic bag neatly placed before her. She opened it, her hands trembling slightly, and began checking. A roll of gauze was pulled out, examined, then placed back precisely. Next came the morphine vial, syringe, scissors, tourniquet. Each item checked 3 times, then returned to its compartment. When her shaking hands dropped a gauze roll, Sarah bent to pick it up and immediately started the process again, as if the world would collapse if a single detail was out of place. She counted silently. 1, 2, 3, to 100. The habit had become a mandatory ritual since leaving Syria. It was the only way she kept herself from spiraling into memories. On her bedside shelf, a small bottle of pills was hidden in a taped-up box. Sarah opened it, took 2 propranolol tablets, swallowed them dry. The pills were bitter, but they dulled the trembling in her chest. The psychiatrist had called them a crutch, not a solution. But for Sarah, they were the last tether keeping her body from betraying her. She pulled an old, crumpled photo from under her pillow, its edges worn and torn. 4 figures in combat gear, their faces deliberately blurred. Sarah traced her finger over each shadow slowly, as if she could touch them. Now I'm just a doctor, she whispered, her voice hoarse, barely audible. The distant sound of a bugle call carried through the night, followed by the rhythmic stomp of boots. The base was assembling for the daily run, but Sarah sat motionless, listening to her heartbeat. Each footstep outside was a blade slicing into her memories. Syria, Aleppo, the roar of AK fire, a child running from rubble, clutching a teddy bear. And she had hesitated. That memory never let go. It surged with every breath, every loud noise, every whiff of gunpowder in the wind. Tonight, it returned like a slow-motion film. Sarah curled forward, hands clutching her head, trying to block the images. But the harder she fought, the fiercer they came. Bloodied faces of her team, an explosion tearing the sky, Scorpion's final glance. In desperation, she folded a gauze roll, pressing it hard into her palm as punishment. Physical pain was easier than the ache of memory. Her skin reddened, but she pressed harder, until her breathing steadied. The door creaked open. Lance, a young medic from the unit, stood in the doorway. He saw Sarah, curled by her bunk, still gripping the gauze. Without a word, he placed a small book on her bed and quietly closed the door. Sarah touched the cover. Field manual, sniper tactics, techniques and training, a sniper's handbook. She hesitated. Her fingers flipped open a page. Chapter 7. Breathing and heart rate control under extreme stress. The words were chillingly familiar. She remembered every curve, every instruction, as if she'd written them herself. Muscle memory reacted before her mind could stop it. Sarah slammed the book shut, pushing it away. No, she whispered. I'm just a doctor now. But in the dark, her hands trembled, not from fear, but from something far worse, the memory of a killer returning. She sat there until morning, rearranging her medic bag again and again, each item in its place, each fold perfectly aligned. The world outside her room was chaos, but in that small bag, everything was under absolute control. It was the only world Sarah could still command. Dawn broke, light spilling into the room. She blinked, exhaling deeply. Another day began, one she only needed to survive through mocking stares, taunting words, and memories that wouldn't kill her. Sarah stood, slinging the medic bag over her shoulder. The red marks on her palms lingered, a reminder that some wounds never heal, they're only hidden. As she stepped out of the barracks, she heard a whisper in the early breeze. Doctors don't fight. A reminder, a curse, or a warning. Sarah didn't know, but she knew the world would soon force her to choose. Remain a doctor, or become what she feared most. The second morning at Fort Carson began with a group fitness drill. The company ran laps around the training field, heavy breaths mingling with the thud of boots on dry ground. Sarah ran at the back, each step laborious, struggling to keep her breathing steady. Sweat beaded on her temples, her hands clenched, as if loosening them would mean losing herself. Ahead, Thompson and Rodriguez jogged and joked, occasionally glancing back with sneering looks. Watch out, our medic might faint any second. Laughter erupted in unison, sharp as a collective weapon. Sarah gritted her teeth, counting her steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. If she kept the rhythm, she wouldn't panic. But her foot caught a rock. Her body stumbled. She tried to recover, but momentum was too strong. Sarah fell, her knees scraping a long trail through the sandy gravel. Whistles rang out. Someone laughed loudly. Doctors don't fight, and they can't run either. Sarah pushed herself up, dust coating her uniform. A thin trickle of blood seeped from her right elbow. In that moment, Lance, the young medic who left the sniper manual on her bunk, stepped forward. He extended a hand to help her. Sarah shook her head, forcing herself to stand. But Lance saw it. As her sleeve shifted, a long, clean scar running from her wrist to near her elbow. Not the kind from a training accident. It was precise, like the mark of a bullet grazing through a gap in armor. Lance's eyes froze. For a moment, he realized this wasn't the mark of a logistics medic, as her file claimed. Sarah caught his gaze and quickly pulled her sleeve down, gripping it until her nails dug into her skin. Just an accident, she said softly, then turned, resuming her run as if she hadn't fallen. But a question had been planted. At noon, in the mess hall, Sarah chose the farthest corner, quietly eating from a tray of cold eggs. Thompson deliberately passed by, slamming his tray onto the table hard enough to splash coffee. Sarah flinched, her spoon clattering onto the tray. Eyes turned to her. Rodriguez mimed a gun with his thumb and forefinger, squinting. Bang! Sarah's body tensed. The tray wobbled, coffee spilling in a long brown streak. Laughter erupted again. Lance, at a nearby table, didn't laugh. He watched Sarah tremble, then saw how she wiped the coffee, each movement precise, symmetrical, 3 times over, like someone obsessed with order. Not a typical fear response, but the reflex of someone who'd survived chaos by controlling every detail. That afternoon, a medical training session took place in a large warehouse. Sarah bandaged a dummy, her movements swift, accurate to the millimeter. But Thompson interrupted. If the doctor gets shot, who saves the savior? He laughed, pulling Rodriguez to play loud battle music from his phone. The sound of AK fire echoed off the metal walls. Sarah froze. The sound, the rhythm, instantly dragged her back to Aleppo. Smoke, dust, and a child with a teddy bear. Her hands dropped the tourniquet. It clattered to the floor. Laughter broke out. See? Doctors don't fight. They can't even save anyone. The class roared. But Lance didn't laugh. He stepped closer, picked up the tourniquet, handed it to her, and whispered, "This isn't normal fear. This is memory." Sarah snatched it, turning away. But Lance's eyes had seen through her. That night, in the barracks, as Sarah arranged her medic bag for the 5th time, the door creaked open. Lance stood there, silent, tapping a rhythm on the frame. "I saw," Sarah said, her voice icy. "Forget it." Lance stayed quiet, but his eyes didn't. They held questions, doubts, and concern. When the door closed, Sarah sank onto the bunk's edge, hands clutching her head. The scar on her arm throbbed, a reminder. She knew her secret couldn't stay hidden forever. Sooner or later, someone would piece together the fragments. Battle scars, muscle memory, reactions unlike a rookie's. And when that happened, Doctors Don't Fight would be a flimsy veil, not enough to shield who she really was. In the dark, Sarah whispered, "Please, don't let anyone see more. Don't let them know who I used to be." But even as the plea faded into nothing, she knew the truth. A battlefield never lets secrets rest. The mess hall that morning was packed. The clatter of metal trays, the clash of forks and spoons, and bursts of laughter blended into a chaotic symphony. Sarah chose a table against the wall, her back to the unit, trying to wrap herself in fragile silence. On her tray, cold eggs, a few slices of canned meat, tepid coffee. She cut the eggs into absurdly small pieces, just to keep her hands from shaking. But the brief calm shattered when Thompson and Rodriguez dragged chairs to sit across from her, slamming their trays down hard enough to splash coffee. "Sorry, Doc." Thompson smirked. "Hope you don't mind a little hot coffee?" Sarah flinched, her body rigid. Her spoon fell, clanging sharply against the tray. The table nearby burst into laughter. Rodriguez seized the moment, forming a gun with his fingers. Squinting. Bang. Sarah choked, her hands gripping the table's edge until her knuckles whitened. The coffee cup tipped, liquid pooling like spilled blood. Laughter echoed through the hall, but this time, something shifted. Lance stood. "Enough," he said, his voice not loud but firm. The room paused for a beat, then erupted in mocking whistles. Thompson laughed loudly, clapping Rodriguez. "Oh, look, the doctor's got a bodyguard." Sarah bowed her head, wiping the coffee with 3 napkins, folding each precisely. But to Lance, it wasn't just a habit. It was how she controlled chaos, taming panic with absolute order. A response forged in real battlefields, not simulated drills. Thompson leaned closer, his breath reeking of coffee and canned meat. 2 weeks, Doc. Iraq's not like this kitchen. No one's wiping tables for you there." Sarah didn't reply. She counted silently. 1, 2, 3, 4. But her body remembered gunpowder, crumbling rubble, a child's cries in Aleppo. Fear wasn't just memory, it was a beast clawing from within. Then, a loud bang from the hall's end. Not gunfire, just a small firecracker someone slipped into her medic bag. But Sarah reacted as if it were a bomb. She collapsed, hands clutching her head, screaming in panic. The hall fell silent. Laughter died. Stunned eyes watched Sarah tremble, sweat soaking her brow. As her uniform shifted in the fall, her sleeve pulled up, revealing a V-shaped scar, stark and precise, the mark of a bullet through armor gaps. No one spoke for heavy seconds. Then Thompson broke the silence. "God, she's really messed up." But for the first time, his voice lacked glee, only confusion and a hint of unease. Lance knelt beside her, his hand light on her shoulder. "Breathe. Listen to me. Breathe." But Sarah shook her head, her eyes wild, staring into nothing. In that moment, pieces fell into place for everyone. The scar, the reflexes, the unnatural fear. Sarah Mitchell wasn't just a timid medic. She'd been somewhere else. A place where those scars were carved, where fear wasn't a test, but reality. That breakfast became a dividing line. Before, they mocked her as a joke. After, they whispered, and Sarah knew her only shield was tearing apart. Captain Hayes's office was small but ruthlessly orderly. A dark wooden desk, 2 chairs opposite, and a wall covered with framed commendations, medals, certificates. Each frame gleamed, reflecting light sharply. Sarah stepped in, her boots tapping softly on the concrete floor. The door closed behind her, cutting off any escape. Hayes didn't tell her to sit immediately. He stood, tall and broad, as if the room shrank to accommodate him. In his hand, a thick file, its edges creased from being flipped through too often. "Sit." His voice was low, allowing no defiance. Sarah sat, her back rigid as steel. Her eyes locked on the file, avoiding his gaze. Hayes opened the first page, his finger tracing the text slowly. Medic Specialist Sarah Mitchell. Johns Hopkins graduate. Outstanding medical degree. But, instead of enlisting as an officer, you signed on as a contract soldier. Unusual. Sarah swallowed hard. "Sir, Hayes raised a hand, cutting her off. "Not done. Your prior service record, heavily redacted. Unexplained gaps. Missions erased from the system. No trace of basic training. Yet your initial marksmanship scores were above standard." He looked up, eyes narrowing. "Care to explain?" Sarah stayed silent. Any word could unlock the door she'd sealed for 2 years. She only whispered, "I'm just a doctor, sir." A long pause stretched. Hayes flipped another page, his voice lowering, almost pitying. "Yesterday, in the mess hall, the whole unit saw. Your reaction wasn't normal fear. It was trauma. I've seen it in soldiers back from Afghanistan." He paused. "I considered pulling you from the front line." For a moment, Sarah looked up, a flicker of hope in her eyes. A way out, a chance to disappear. But Hayes continued, "Then I remembered. 2 weeks from now, we deploy to Iraq. We need bodies. We can't lose a medic." He set the file down. "Even if it's a doctor who doesn't fight." Those final words stabbed into Sarah's chest. The hope she'd felt crumbled. Trapped in the role she both longed to escape and couldn't abandon. "Sir," her voice trembled, "if I can't, if I'm not capable, no ifs." Hayes cut her off. "After deployment, we'll reassess. But for now, you're still in this formation." Dismissed. Sarah stood, walking to the door. The steel door clanged shut behind her, the sound echoing in her chest like a lock snapping. Outside, soldiers moved, laughed, their boots clattering. But in Sarah's ears, all she heard was her pounding heartbeat. Fierce, like war drums she didn't want to march to. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes, breathing. Part of her wanted to cry. Another part whispered, "This is punishment. This is a debt you owe." In the dim hallway, Sarah knew there was no way back. And the harder she hid, the closer the truth about her real self came to light. The afternoon heat scorched the training field like fire. The unit gathered in a large warehouse for a combat rescue drill. Rubber dummies lay scattered on the concrete, fake blood pooling. Sarah knelt beside one, her hands moving mechanically. Tourniquet, pressure bandage, airway check. Here, she felt in control when everything boiled down to medicine, to saving lives. But Thompson wouldn't let it rest. He stepped forward, voice dripping with mockery. "If the doctor gets shot, who saves the savior?" Rodriguez chimed in. "Let's make it more realistic." He pulled out his phone, playing a recording of AK-47 fire, the sound echoing off the metal walls like a real battle. Sarah froze. The noise, the cadence, yanked her back to Aleppo. Smoke, blood, a child with a teddy bear stepping from the dark. Her hands shook. The tourniquet slipped, clattering to the floor. Laughter exploded. "This is our medic? A nurse who can't tie a tourniquet when she hears gunfire," Thompson shouted, his grin vicious. Sarah didn't react. She was sinking into a pit, her body curling, hands covering her ears, muttering incoherent words. No, never again. Don't make me. The room's mood shifted. The initial laughter faded. Even Thompson hesitated, seeing the raw panic in Sarah's eyes, not clumsy fear, but a living nightmare. Rodriguez started to laugh again, but a firecracker hidden in Sarah's medic bag exploded. The sharp blast filled the room with smoke. Sarah screamed, collapsing, curling into herself. Her uniform shifted, her sleeve pulling up, revealing undeniable scars. Bullet wounds through armor gaps, neatly stitched, the kind from battlefield surgeries, not accidents, not jokes. The room fell silent. All laughter stopped. Lance rushed forward, kneeling beside her, his voice low. Enough! This isn't a game anymore. Don't you see? This is real trauma. Sarah trembled, each breath a jagged cut. The scars revealed everything. Those who mocked her now stood frozen, unsure what to say. Thompson glanced at Rodriguez, his face pale. God, what have we done? The warehouse door swung open. Lieutenant Colonel Webb appeared, his icy gaze sweeping the scene. With a nod, guards dispersed the crowd, forcing everyone out. When only Sarah and Lance remained, Webb pulled out an encrypted phone, typing swiftly. His eyes lingered on Sarah, an expression of someone who knew more than he should. Sarah curled in a corner, still muttering. I'm just a doctor. Just a doctor. But Webb didn't see a doctor. He saw something else, something he'd been tracking for 2 years. Rodriguez's prank had turned into a real explosion. Not in the room, but in the truth. The unit now knew. Sarah Mitchell carried secrets no logistics medic could have. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb's temporary office sat at the base's edge in a steel building. No medals on the walls. No family photos. Just a tidy desk, a lamp casting dim yellow light, and an encrypted phone always at hand. It felt more like a command center than an officer's office. Sarah sat across from him, her back still trembling slightly. The panic from the warehouse hadn't faded. Her hands gripped the chair's edge, hiding the scars under her long sleeves. Webb stared at her, his gaze piercing. He didn't speak immediately, just flipped through a thin file. Its pages blacked out with heavy redactions almost empty. He tapped them lightly. You can hide a past with black ink, Webb said slowly. But scars don't lie. How long did you think you could fool me, Mitchell? Sarah pressed her lips together. I don't know what you mean. I'm just a doctor. Webb gave a faint, skeptical smile. He turned his encrypted phone, its screen flashing for a second enough for Sarah to see a file name, Phantom divided by 27. Her heart clenched. In Syria, Webb continued, an operative vanished after Aleppo. Codename Phantom. Records show 47 targets eliminated. That person never returned. But I saw how you held a rifle at the range, how your thumb found the safety, even when you faked clumsiness. And yesterday, those scars. Sarah took a deep breath, but said nothing. Webb leaned forward. I don't care who you were. I care about this. Scorpion. He's back. And he's hunting you. That name sliced into her memory like a blade. Sarah shuddered. She heard screams again. Saw hateful eyes. The explosion that took her team and a child. He thinks you betrayed him, Webb said. He blames you for his son's death. And trust me, he won't stop until you're dead. Sarah's hands tightened, nails digging into her palms. What do you want from me? Webb leaned back, arms crossed. Honesty. You want to keep playing doctor who doesn't fight. Fine. But when Iraq erupts, that'll kill your unit. Or, you can admit who you are, use your skills, and end Scorpion before he ends you. Sarah let out a bitter laugh. Admit? If I do? What happens? You'll turn me into a tool again. Phantom rising from the grave. I lost everything because of that name. Webb stayed silent, then tilted his head. Maybe. But right now, Mitchell, your choice isn't just about living or dying. It's about the survival of those you're treating. Thompson, Lance, Miller, all of them. They don't know, but I do. You're the only thing standing between them and a mass grave. The air grew thick, Sarah struggling to breathe. She wanted to scream that she was just a doctor, that she wasn't Phantom. But even those words felt hollow, as her scars throbbed with every heartbeat. Webb closed the file, his voice icy. You have 2 weeks. Then Irish Road will decide your true identity. Doctor or killer. Healer or destroyer. No one can hide forever. Sarah stood, turning to leave. Before the door closed, Webb's voice echoed softly, but clear. Welcome back, Phantom. Sarah froze, but didn't look back. She only walked away, each step heavy, as if carrying a graveyard on her shoulders. After meeting Webb, Sarah buried herself in medical work. She spent hours in the supply room, checking every box of drugs, sorting every bandage pack, logging meticulously. The motions became her mask, the mask of a doctor who doesn't fight. If she was thorough enough, dedicated enough, maybe they'd forget her panic, forget the exposed scar. But reality worked against her. During a morning emergency drill, a rookie dropped a stretcher. Sarah dove forward, her movements so fast the group froze. She pivoted, lowered her center, and in under a second, stopped the collision, keeping the casualty from falling. The maneuver was perfect, not a medic's, but someone trained in combat reflexes thousands of times. Damn, Thompson muttered, eyes narrowing. Where'd you learn those moves? Sarah answered softly. Experience. But in his eyes, suspicion took root. That afternoon, in the break room, Rodriguez toyed with a knife, peeling an apple. Joking, he tossed it onto the table. The blade bounced, spinning in the air. Sarah, without thinking, caught it mid-spin, her movement crisp. Her wrist angled perfectly to avoid the blade. It happened in a single breath. No one laughed. Instead, a heavy silence fell. Sarah quickly set the knife down, trembling slightly. But the truth had slipped out. That reflex wasn't random. Lance, from the room's corner, watched it all. His eyes were stern. He no longer doubted, he knew. And that knowledge held both fear and respect. That night, Sarah returned to her ritual, arranging her medic bag, counting items, taking pills. But this time, her fingers shook for a different reason. Not fear. Muscle memory was returning. Holding bandage scissors, her hands settled into a trigger-pull stance, checking morphine. Her breathing slowed, as if steadying for a shot. In the bathroom mirror, the face staring back wasn't Medic Mitchell anymore. Those deep, cold eyes belonged to Phantom, the ghost Webb had named. The next day, during an armed march, Sarah, though tasked only with carrying her medic bag, moved with uncanny precision. The terrain was rough, soldiers stumbled, but she walked as if she'd crossed such ground hundreds of times. Hayes, observing from afar, said nothing, but his eyes missed nothing. At a rest stop, Rodriguez teased, tossing a rock at her. Sarah dodged smoothly, her reflex too quick, then snapped upright, her eyes flashing as if ready to counterattack. The group went silent for seconds. Sarah realized her mistake, quickly crouching to check her boots. But the image was seared into their minds. That evening, in the barracks, Thompson leaned toward Lance, his voice low. You saw, right? She's not just a medic. Lance paused, then said, I saw someone who survived a place we can't imagine. Sarah, overhearing from her bunk, felt her heart tighten. Her secret was no longer secret. The fragments were coming together in her teammates' eyes. She was no longer the cowardly doctor, she'd become a dangerous enigma. Before sleep, Sarah whispered to herself, if they know everything, will they still want me here, or fear me more than the enemy? Baghdad's dawn wasn't gentle. It was a blade slicing through the night, exposing the city as if stripping away every secret. Sarah sat in the back of map vehicle number 4, her medic bag at her feet, her back against the cold steel seat. The engine's heavy rumble was like the heartbeat of a giant metal beast. "Convoy ready. Move out." Hayes's voice crackled over the radio. 4 maps rolled out in a line, heading onto Irish Road. This 7-mile stretch had long been a nightmare for American troops, where roadside bombs, RPGs, and snipers always waited. In the silence, only the screech of steel and the ragged breaths of young soldiers could be heard. Sarah counted her heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. Deep breath. Hold. Exhale. She tried to stay in her doctor role, but her eyes drifted to the window. Baghdad's streets were eerily empty that morning. Too empty. Shops were shuttered, carts abandoned in the market. No children ran about. No elders sat at doorways. Sarah knew what it meant. The locals had fled. As if they knew something was coming, she gripped her medic bag's strap, her voice barely audible. "We shouldn't be here." "What's that?" Martinez, sitting beside her, turned. Sarah shook her head. "Nothing." "Over the radio?" Thompson chuckled from the lead vehicle. "Our doc's getting nervous. Who won yesterday's betting pool?" Laughter crackled through the comms. Sarah lowered her head, but it wasn't fear inside her. It was cold certainty, the instinct of someone who'd survived countless ambushes. She was reading signs written on the asphalt. The convoy rolled over a concrete bridge, a perfect choke point. Sarah tilted her head, eyes scanning rooftops. Ideal RPG firing angles. Too close for reaction time. "We should stop." This time, she spoke louder. "Shut it, Mitchell," Thompson snapped. "Leave commanding to those who fight." Sarah swallowed hard. She knew words wouldn't win. Instead, she counted silently in Russian. An old habit. Odin, Dve, try. Martinez frowned. "What the hell's that?" "Just a way to stay calm." But it was the rhythm of preparing to fire. Her body was reverting to instinct, even as her mind resisted. Outside, sunlight glinted off burned-out vehicles, hastily filled bomb craters. The air was thick, charged with static. Each second stretched like a taut rope about to snap. Rodriguez played soft music in his vehicle, distorted guitar notes crackling over the radio. "Relax, Doc. Just a morning drive." But his voice was hoarse, lacking confidence. They all felt it. A turn in the road. A shadow flashed on a distant rooftop. Sarah sat upright, her hand instinctively reaching for the M4 propped by her seat. "Doc?" Martinez stared. Sarah dropped the rifle, covering by pulling her medic bag onto her lap. Her heart raced, not from fear, but familiarity. Her body had sensed the threat before her mind caught up. "God," she whispered. "It's here." A massive explosion roared behind them. The road sealed shut with smoke and fire. The convoy was trapped between 2 kill zones. Over the radio, Thompson's voice bellowed, "Ambush! Ambush!" Sarah closed her eyes. Hayes's words echoed in her mind. "Doctors don't fight." But in this moment, amid explosions and screams, she knew that choice had been stolen. Fire and smoke erupted behind, blocking retreat. The map convoy was a caged beast, trapped among hunting wolves. An RPG tore through the air, slamming into the lead vehicle's steel hull. The sound was deafening, thick metal ringing like a death knell. Sarah was thrown back against her seat, her medic bag tumbling to the floor. She heard Martinez screaming, "Hit, we're hit!" Machine gun fire rained from both sides' rooftops. Bullets ricocheted off armor like hail. Inside, soldiers frantically aimed through firing slits, returning fire blindly. "Radio's dead." "Comms are cut!" a soldier shouted. Sarah ducked low, her heart pounding. The air was thick with gunpowder and screams. Through a narrow slit in the armor, she saw the glint of a sniper's barrel. He was waiting for her to lean out. Tend to a wounded soldier. And take her out. Her body froze. Hayes's words resounded. Doctors, don't fight. But Miller's cries didn't stop. Each second drained more blood. A life. Another debt. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, breathing deeply. When she opened them, they weren't the eyes of the trembling medic at Fort Carson. They were Phantom's the ghost, who once shook an entire Syrian city. Her hand released the medic bag. Instead, her fingers found the M4 by her seat. Cold steel met skin. The metal felt familiar, like an old handshake. "Sarah?" Martinez gaped. "What are you doing?" She didn't answer. A fluid motion. Chamber check. Safety off. Stock to shoulder. 2 seconds. As if her body had waited for this moment for 2 years. Through the scope, the world narrowed. 387 meters. Right rooftop. Slight east wind. The sniper's head peeked out. Sarah's fingers squeezed the trigger. Crack. A dry sound. The figure collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. His rifle fell from the ledge, clattering onto concrete. Inside the vehicle. Silence. They'd just seen their panicked medic make a shot most trained snipers couldn't. Sarah didn't pause. She shouted, her voice sharp, cold. "Rodriguez, cover left. Martinez, keep Miller alive until I get there. Everyone else suppressive fire. 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock. Gunfire answered her orders. No one questioned her. In that moment, Sarah became the battlefield commander. She slid out of the vehicle, moving low and fast. Bullets whizzed overhead, but she melted into the smoke, choosing cover, picking angles. Her shots were surgical, each finding an enemy's heart or forehead. In 45 seconds, enemy fire weakened. A gap opened. Sarah slid to Miller, his blood still gushing. Her hands pressed hard, applied a tourniquet, injected morphine, movements precise as a machine. When a grenade landed nearby, she didn't hesitate. Her other hand grabbed it, threw it back, the blast erupting far away. "Holy God," Martinez whispered. "She's not just a doctor." No one responded. They knew but couldn't say. A voice crackled over the radio. British, precise, cold. "Hello, Phantom. You've finally shown yourself." Sarah froze. That name, that past, exploded into the air. The whole convoy heard. Thompson, bloodied in the overturned lead vehicle, choked out. "Phantom, who's that?" Sarah didn't answer. Her eyes were steel, rifle still in hand. In that moment, they all understood. Their doctor was gone. A monster had returned. Gunfire thundered like a storm. Black smoke rose from the overturned lead map, turning the road into a corridor of death. Bullets screamed past. Concrete shards flew. But amid the chaos, Sarah's voice rang out like a command etched in steel. "Rodriguez left. Martinez direct pressure. Keep Miller conscious." Lance checked the rear angle. No trembling, no hesitation. The hands that once shook at a bang now moved with certainty, pressing bandages, tying tourniquets, pulling triggers with the same precision. Doctor and killer merged. Thompson, crawling from the burning wreckage, gaped at the scene. The woman he'd called coward was commanding like a leader of deathly campaigns. "What the hell?" he muttered, blood trickling from his temple. Another RPG exploded ahead, throwing up dirt and sand. Sarah looked up, eyes scanning. No panic, only calculation. Right side, 3rd floor, window with sandbags. She reported. Rodriguez didn't ask how she knew. He just fired. The second RPG detonated in its launcher, turning the shooter into a streak of fire. The convoy gained a moment to breathe. But the radio crackled, a deep male voice, clear, with a faint Middle Eastern accent. "Phantom, the mask has finally fallen." Sarah froze, her body drained of air. She knew that voice. Martinez frowned. Who? Who just called you Phantom? The voice continued, echoing through all channels, as if he were inside their ears. You let my son die. 2 years I've hunted you. And now, we meet again on this road. You're no doctor anymore. You're just a killer like me, Sarah whispered. But all heard, Scorpion. The name dropped like a stone into a well. The unit froze. Who's Scorpion? Thompson roared, half in panic, half in suspicion. Sarah didn't answer. Every second of distraction could kill more. But in her mind, Syria flared Aleppo. Smoke. Blood. An 8-year-old with a teddy bear. The moment she ordered a ceasefire. And Scorpion, her teammate, her fellow killer, had to shoot his own son. That was the day Phantom vanished. And Sarah Mitchell was born. But now, he was back, dragging her down with him. A nearby explosion snapped Sarah back. Miller coughed, blood foaming. He had minutes left without an airway. Sarah knelt, hands rifling her medic bag, pulling a long needle. Even as bullets flew, she calmly found the right rib space. Hold him, she shouted. Martinez pinned Miller as Sarah drove the needle through. Compressed air, hissing, lungs re-inflating. Miller gasped his first breath, his hazy eyes finding her. Doc, he rasped. Sarah pressed her lips tight. She couldn't afford to soften. A new burst of gunfire erupted from a western building. Sarah raised her M4, firing 3 shots. 3 targets dropped. Rodriguez stared, nearly forgetting to shoot. You're not a medic. God, what are you? Sarah didn't look at him. She only exhaled. Someone trying to keep you alive. Scorpion's voice returned, closer now, as if from the rooftop. Healer or killer? Choose, Phantom. Doctors don't fight, but ghosts do. Sarah closed her eyes briefly. She didn't want to choose. But blood still flowed, bullets still screamed, and the truth was, the choice had been taken long ago. She opened her eyes, her voice firm. We fall back to the concrete bridge. Form a defensive circle. I'll lead. No one argued. The soldiers who once mocked her followed without hesitation. Amid gunfire, they ran, dragging the wounded, forming a small defensive ring in hell. Sarah fired, bandaged, shouted orders. On the rooftop, a shadow moved silently. Scorpion watched, waiting. And Sarah knew this wasn't just an ambush. It was a hunt. A hunt, where the prey had nowhere to hide. Night fell on Irish Road, but flames from burning maps turned the sky blood red. Gunfire slowed. The enemy had retreated to the rooftops, leaving a deadly silence. Sarah knelt in the defensive circle, her hands bloodied to the elbows. Miller was stabilized. Thompson clung to life. Rodriguez slumped against a tire, face ashen. She wanted to keep being a doctor, saving lives, stopping blood. But the eyes on the rooftops wouldn't allow it. And among them, one pair was familiar, watching her. His voice rang out, no longer over radio, but clear across the road, like a funeral bell. Phantom, come out. Don't hide behind your soldiers. This is between you and me. Sarah stood, shoulders heavy, M4 in hand. Every soldier around her looked up, their eyes mixed with hope and fear. You don't have to go, Lance said, voice hoarse. We can hold until reinforcements arrive. Sarah shook her head. No, this isn't an ambush. It's an execution. If I don't go, he won't stop. Thompson, blood-soaked, grabbed her hand. You're not a sniper anymore. You're a doctor. Sarah looked at him, her eyes carrying pain no words could capture. I'm both. And today, to save you all, I have to be the name I buried. She stood, stepping through smoke, each footfall echoing like war drums. Far off, Scorpion's silhouette appeared on a ruined rooftop. Wind whipped his headscarf, revealing a face etched with grief and hatred. In his eyes, Not just loathing, but the memory of a bond that saved each other's lives dozens of times. "You haven't changed," Sarah called out. "And you've changed too much," Scorpion replied. "That day, if you'd pulled the trigger, your team would have lived. My son would have died quickly, painlessly. But you hesitated. And because of your weakness, we all lost." Sarah gripped her M4 tighter. "He was a child, John. Even in a suicide vest, he was a child. That child was my son." Scorpion's voice broke. "A wound never healed. And I had to kill him. Because of you." Silence tore through the battlefield. Everyone in the convoy heard. The truth of Aleppo. The truth Sarah buried. Now spilled like blood on sand. Scorpion raised his rifle. "Today, I end this. No more phantom. No more ghost. Just a corpse on the road." Sarah lifted her weapon, aiming at him. Her finger rested on the trigger, heartbeat slowing. Inhale 4, hold 4. Exhale 4. Every instinct screamed, "Fire. End it. Survive." But her eyes wavered. Before her wasn't just an enemy. It was the man who'd covered her back under Syrian fire, who'd called her sister in blood. "You want me dead," Sarah said softly, "or to become like you?" Scorpion froze. His rifle trembled. Pain and hatred battled in his eyes. For a moment, both stood still, two ghosts of Aleppo, trapped between past and present. A loud explosion shattered the silence. An RPG from afar, not Scorpion's, aimed at the convoy's defensive circle. Sarah reacted before thinking. She fired. The bullet hit the shooter's hand, the RPG detonating early, obliterating the rooftop. In that instant, her eyes met Scorpion's again. No hatred, only recognition. Both had been turned into tools. Both had lost too much. Scorpion lowered his rifle, his voice hoarse. "We'll meet again, Phantom. And next time, my hand might not shake." He vanished into the dark, like a mirage. Sarah ran back to the convoy. Miller still lived. Thompson still breathed. The soldiers held their circle. All looked at her differently, not as the trembling medic, but as a warrior they never knew. But Sarah felt no victory. Her hands were still bloody, and Hayes's words echoed in her mind. "Doctors don't fight." She knelt, grabbing her medic bag, hands trembling slightly. But this time, not from fear, because she knew, once she picked up a gun again, the ghost inside her wouldn't sleep easily. The smoke and dust slowly cleared. Iraq's dawn spilling over the wreckage and blood-streaked but living faces. Sarah sat there, her medic bag wide open, the rifle set aside. Her hands trembled as she stitched a wound for Thompson, the man who once scorned her, now looking at her with a respect he'd never shown. She had fought, yes, but more importantly, she had saved lives. And in that moment, Sarah realized, the name Phantom wasn't just a symbol of a killing ghost. It could also be a ghost of redemption, a woman carrying the weight of her past, yet choosing to heal rather than abandon. "Doctors don't fight," they had said. But perhaps the truth was, doctors fight in their own way, not just against enemies, but against the darkness within their own souls, to hold on to a shred of humanity. And that's the question for you. In a world demanding ruthlessness to survive, what would you hold on to avoid losing yourself?